Hey, family, and welcome back to Empowered Voices, the podcast where we delve into real experiences of Black women in the workforce. I'm your host, Edna Howard, and today we're tackling a topic that is widely discussed amongst Black women, and that is imposter syndrome. We're going to explore how imposter syndrome manifests specifically for Black women, the unique challenges they face that contribute to these feelings of self doubt, and mostly important strategies for overcoming them. We'll be diving into impact of stereotype, microaggressions, the pressure of representation, and the importance of community and self-care. So get ready for an insightful conversation with a powerful guest. Keep watching so you can get your blessing. Welcome to Voices Empowered, a podcast designed to empower, educate, and equip Black women in the next gen. This platform really is used to amplify the voices of Black women in the workforce with the emphasis on giving that next generation tools and resources to thrive. And I'm so excited you're joining me for another empowering message because today we have back with us Dr. Daniels, who's amazing. She is a CEO and she's the CEO of Carmela Daniels Mentoring and Counseling LLC. And she's also a dedicated advocate for marginalized communities. With her extensive experience in higher education, mentoring, and counseling, Dr. Daniels brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to our conversation today. And as we recognize, she's being recognized as a leader in her field. She's passionate about what she does, fostering inclusive leadership and supporting individuals in their journey to personal professional success. So think of me as your chief encouragement officer, getting you ready to take a deep dive into an inspired, empowered conversation where we're going to talk more about imposter syndrome and self-doubt for Black women in the workforce. Welcome to the show, Dr. Daniels.
Welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it so very much.
Awesome. I love that. So yeah, we're going to jump right on in. We're talking today about imposter syndrome and self-doubt for Black women in the workforce. I know I've struggled with it over the years. I believe you've had some challenges there as well. So what would you say, how does imposter syndrome really manifest differently for Black women in the workforce compared to other groups?
So I want to say and start off with, imposter syndrome affects us all and can affect us all in some way. And the reason why I believe that is highlighted so much more for women of color is because we have been taught from an early age, if you work hard, you keep your nose in the books, you do everything right, you kind to people, you do these certain things, that you will be rewarded in that. And so that's what women of color have done. We are the most educated. We are the most going back to school. We're multitasking. And so it shows up differently for us because at the end of the day, we are still so very marginalized. We're overlooked. We don't get to be still our authentic selves. We don't get to engage in a way that we need to. And the spaces are just not created for us to be very safe. And imposter syndrome rises and floats to the top, even for those of us who are even the most overqualified for work opportunities, built programs from the ground up only for them to be taken from us or credit given to someone else. And then it makes you feel on the inside that I'm not good enough. I haven't done enough. That one day I was upset and that hurt my chances. But that's not what happens with our peers. Right. They get to be their authentic selves. Many times they may show up in spaces not even nearly as qualified, but they're amplified in those spaces, which changes for us. That's why it impacts us differently.
That is so crazy. What you just said is all that and more. And I think too, when you start to look at the stereotypes and microaggressions we suffer with, and then also sometimes you're not sure if you're getting hired for, in that term, visibility or the diversity hire. So now you got all that on your shoulders, right? And you want to perform and outperform, and you're doing that, but sometimes you just feel like I'm just not there, and I don't know if you've struggled with that in the past, but I know I have. It's like I get there and I'm like, it always is like there's something else that needs to be done, even though you've done it all.
And it's never enough, or you never
like
seen it.
Not that we're not enough, is that it feels like it's never enough. It's like, what else do I need to do to, make this thing solidified?
Yep. It's everything. It's pay. It's degrees. It's how we wear our hair. It's how we talk. Just being vocal. We're seen as angry as opposed to passionate. And these things all contribute to all the things that are rooted within our systems. So when we're walking in the room, the imposter syndrome from just being hired, that can just from being hired can give us imposter syndrome, because you're like, are they only picking me because I'm the DEI hire, or they're only picking me because they need somebody else in the room, but they're really not going to listen to me when I voice my concerns or voice my this or give ideas. Will that even be considered? That also can cause imposter syndrome, because once you get in that room, you're like, this still doesn't feel quite right, probably because something still isn't quite right.
That's real. Yes. Yes. So and I also think too, and we can go back to our last podcast that we did together, where the lack of mentorship and sponsorship sometimes is not available. So Black women may have limited access to that. And with the understanding that their unique experiences and challenges need to be addressed, and having someone to be able to kind of come alongside, mentor, and sponsor them. So there's a lack of support. Sometimes I think it's harder to navigate that workplace because of that lack of support. And then that imposter syndrome just jumps right on in there. It's a mental.
Absolutely. We struggle with it even when we don't know, even when we're at our highest peak. Right. We still can struggle with that because of those other nuances that still take place.
Yeah. Yeah. And those cultural expectations. Mm-hmm. The cultural expectations of Black women, when they face the cultural expectations to be strong, to be the self-reliant one, and that pops up sometimes too, where you may know what you're doing, right? And you may have a question, and you feel like, well, I'm not going to ask that question because they might think that I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. That pops up, that cultural expectation of being self-reliant and being the strong one and knowing everything without any guidance.
Mm-hmm. Where other colleagues and peers are allowed to learn.
Yes.
When they ask questions, that's met with eagerness, right? Perseverance. Oh, she's really expanding herself. Mm-hmm. When we ask that question, it's immediately, well, you should know the answer to that. Or the eyes or the silence from the question that you ask in the room and people didn't respond accordingly. That makes you feel as if, okay, I'm not smart enough to be here. And I am tired of people getting excuses for dropping microaggressions and leaving people feeling impostered in all these rooms for women of color. Right. When we've worked just as hard to get there. No one is giving us anything. I have earned this seat here. I am more than qualified to be here, but systematically, we're still just fighting so many nuances. Mm-hmm. Women of color are being overlooked for jobs, not considered for positions to their colleague who has the least on their resume, or maybe doesn't have enough experience. But when they are being trained, they are being looked at, somebody's going to help them. But we still have to navigate these systems alone. We still have to figure out, when I walk in the room, I'm looking for the woman who looks like me. And if we don't see that, then that can also build imposter syndrome.
And then to keep you silent in the room sometimes too. But from my perspective, Dr. Daniels, you're pretty vocal. So I could see you in the room just talking. And I guess the question for you is, it's really a personal question back to you, because you are vocal. Has that ever happened to you where you've asked a question and it was silent in the room?
Mm-hmm. Many times. When I've led initiatives in my workplace, and then when it comes down to performance appraisal, that never even comes up. But it comes down to the mistake that I made, or something that I missed, or I didn't do this one training. I was late on something. That is what's brought up in the conversation. And it makes you feel, it made me feel like, okay, I'm working super hard, and this is the only thing that came up in my evaluation. They missed the 948 other things that I did this calendar year, right? Because they're not looking for that. They're not looking for that. And then that causes us to pull in. It caused me to pull in and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to do this. We're given the impression that we should be strong, right? But when we are strong, then that's seen as aggressive. Right. And so you're constantly navigating these internal emotions with these external systematic problems. And it's very hard for women of color. Just
Oh my
there's
goodness.
no other way to say it.
Yeah, we have a psychoanalyst coming on the show next Friday, and she will be addressing that too from the mental aspect of being challenged in that way. And I think it all kind of ties together. We're talking it from experience, lived experiences. She's going to come and talk from a scientific experience of how that affects us as women of color. And I'm
Absolutely.
just excited that that's going to all tie together. It's so she'll be able to share some a little bit about that as well. But I want to ask you a question. And first of all, thank you for what you do. I always thank you because I know you're a powerful woman. I know you're on the move to kick open doors and make sure that things are laid out correctly for those that are coming up behind you. So what are the root causes you think of imposter syndrome among Black women professionals? And how do you think society and systemic factors contribute to these feelings?
Well, you know what? I mean, we can swim real deep down on that. It starts, I think, from just the beginning of us as young women, as girls, as Black and brown girls, right? When you hear these things, oh, you cute to be so dark, or you this, that, and the other things that I cringe hearing now that we heard as young. But moving up to what I think how it can be looked at, or what it's been looked at, is that we're looking at it from internalizing that we have to have these safe spaces to be seen and heard. And we have to build, we've talked about this on your podcast many times, mentors, sisters, other spaces of safety that have been created for us intentionally, not just as a checkbox, but intentionally to help with that. And we have to really work on, I am enough. We have to repeat that to ourselves. We have to have so many things that uplift us and make us who we are. And that's how I think we combat that. We break down the things that we heard and we dissect that either through therapy or other therapeutic means. And then we step into our true selves and saying, this is who I am. This is how my body is shaped. This is what my hair looks like. This is what my skin looks like. And that is enough. And then we just keep constantly chipping away at the barriers, the walls that have been built around us that tells us the opposite, that you're not enough, that something is wrong with you, that you should be 40 pounds lighter and 2 shades lighter and this, that, and the other. And
hair,
hair, all of that. All of that. From the clothes that we wear, from the everything. You know why we spend so much time and money in that area? Because we know that part of it is connected somehow to our character when it really shouldn't be there anyway. But we as women of color know, if I ain't looking this way, I ain't dressing this way, I don't have it, then I'm going to be considered less than. And then that also continuously fuels that imposter syndrome.
Yes, yes. That's interesting. You talk about the appearance too, because I know for years and people would always say, "You so sharp, girl. You dress," because that was the way my mom was. It's a learned thing for me. I was like, I watched her get up every morning, get dressed, go to her government job, and she was always like on point. So I learned that very early on that okay, as a Black woman, you need to be on point, right? But then it becomes this thing that you want perfection in that. It's like I gotta look my ultimate best all the time because you're being judged on your appearance.
Absolutely. It's connected to character and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. And you're absolutely right. We get those informations, but then you get criticized. Why are you so dressed up? You always so dressed up.
I had somebody say, "Girl, you wear heels all the time." I'm like, okay, what's that?
You're doing the most. Then you see what I'm saying? So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you will. And it's like, okay, well, I look good, and that still ain't enough. Or I look too good.
But you look too good. That's what it is.
Too good. You're too cute, girl. And nobody's rooting you in that. And so again, you're compared.
Yeah.
You're compared.
It's so crazy. It's so much. And we could just probably talk all day long.
Oh, all day. Yeah. From our relationships and our community with our mates, with our everything, social media, all of these things. I am tired of looking at women of color and they're just trying to add one more thing on so they can be accepted in all the spaces that they have earned. It is too much. It's too much.
It is a lot. So that have shifting gears a little bit when we start to think about how can we combat imposter syndrome and build authentic confidence, like within ourselves? What are some of the things you've done in your career to build up your confidence? Because first of all, it takes courage, right? The courage to build up the confidence, to get the competence to be confident. So how have you done that? Because you're just so powerful and so awesome. And I know that there could be some days that you might feel a certain way, but you know, for the most part, you're walking in your confidence. How did you get?
I keep the women who keep me safe absolutely close.
Okay.
I exercise my nose as much as I possible. I'm being honest with you. I don't care if I have to resign from a position. I can't be on this board. I'm not going to be able to go eat lunch with that lady no more. I'm not going to put myself in unsafe positions. Because at the end of the day, what I feel like I know about Black and brown women, we are so hard on ourselves anyway. We're going to give ourselves the blues almost regardless, even if the world is going perfect. So why expose ourselves to spaces that we know are going to bring us down, harm us, and build this imposter syndrome? I'm not worthy to be here. I'm not good enough. I also stopped really trying to process my rejections as showing a lack somewhere within me. I didn't get the job. I didn't get the position.
Right.
I had a breakup of a relationship.
Yeah.
That means I'm not worthy. Really stopping that behavior and changing that mentality, changing that inner critic, if you will, right? That stinking thinking, the stuff that keeps us really in bed, keeps us in unhealthy states. If I make a mistake, finding a space to be safe about that and not trusting myself in every way with everyone. And then again, back to the no. We give away so much of ourselves and we have to take care of ourselves. So when the days aren't good for me or the days are long or it's too much, then I exercise my nose. That helps me also from having an increased imposter syndrome, because then I'm not in spaces that make me question myself every 15 minutes. I shouldn't have came. I didn't get my makeup done before I got here. I didn't bring my good purse today. I got these shoes on. I'm just not going to be able to make that. Thank you for thinking of me. And then that's it. And we move on. And so those are some of the things that I've had to really shift my board of directors. Who's my homegirls? Who am I eating with? Who am I talking to? And to really help get myself in a space that helps.
Yeah, I love that. And then you also think about the energy, like the energy that people bring into your space, right? What that feels like, because a lot of times the energy ain't right and you know it. I mean, instinct tells you. So just some of the things that you've done, like saying, I might not eat with that person anymore, or this person in my space didn't feel right. You know, you want to, as God has affirmed us, we affirm ourselves. But because of everything that's going on out in the world, it's a lot, and you have to like internalize it, such as affirmations, mindfulness, and celebrating your accomplishments. You know, one of the things I share with women who I coach, I talk to them about creating a confidence blueprint, right? What does that look like? A confidence resume where all your accomplishments, small, big, doesn't matter, have something written down. So when you're having a day or having a moment, you can look at that list and you can remind yourself of how great you are.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to say to the back of that is that someone told me everybody can't go.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that from the space of, you got a friend that's like, you always trying to do the most, you this or you that, and you realizing, oh, I think she's playing with me, but then you like, oh, I don't know. She says that every time I see her. Yeah, okay, she can't go. She can't go. I don't care if she's at the brunch or not. She can't go. And you gotta protect yourself in a way that really takes care of you.
You really do. And that's interesting you say that, because you have to really like dissect it sometimes when you go and get out of that person's space. And just what you just said, if they say something and they consistently keep saying the same thing, but they're like, I'm just playing, girl, that ain't no joke.
When is it being done? When is it being done? Right. How do you feel on the inside after it's done? Can you go to her and say, hey, that really hurts my feelings when you say that? Right. And then if she's like, oh, girl, you're just being sensitive or whatever. Right. Just check it. And it's not that you got to clean everybody out, but sometimes you got to just make sure that circle is small, because again, the world is not rooting for us. Right. No one is going to come save us. We have to be working on saving ourselves.
Exactly. And so what saving ourselves looks like is having the right tribe.
Absolutely.
And narrowing it down to your inner circle. So when you're having a discussion, a conversation. And I can give you an example of this. I have someone that I coach, and she's amazing, right? And she has all of these great ideas, but because she's like the first gen that's ever done anything like that in her family, where she has her own business, she's doing this. So she can't really go talk to just anybody. Because if you say something, you got this great idea and you're sharing it with someone who is not really in that headspace, and they shoot it down, that could affect you as well.
Absolutely.
I said to her when we were talking, I was like, well, there's some things you're going to have to recognize about the people you talk to, right? And be able to say, you know what, maybe I don't share that piece of information with them or that idea, because it's easy for people who are in the arena to judge you or say something about what you're doing, because they never will be in that arena.
Absolutely.
So we shouldn't allow folks who are going to, and I say this out loud, we should not allow folks who are not going to celebrate our accomplishments or celebrate us as an individual to give us their opinion. I always say, you know, consider the source.
Absolutely.
Saying this.
Yeah.
What impact does it have on you as a Black woman?
Absolutely. The giraffe is not concerned about the view of the tortoise.
That's good. I love that.
So sometimes you're having conversations with people who don't have your view. They're the tortoise. They're seeing everything from the grass level. You're the giraffe. You're seeing above the trees. And so some conferences, some calls need to be just private. They're not conference calls. They're not this. You can't. Sometimes you have to move in silence to protect your inner peace, to decrease imposter syndrome and self-doubt. Because folk will be like, girl, I don't know how you're going to do that. You come from poor. You ain't even have no money.
Exactly.
How you going to build a business? How you going to help other people and you've been on drugs before? And how you going to do that and you was an unwed mama?
So now they putting you down. And, but they trying to give you advice at the same time, right?
Right. People be like, you can't turn your scars into stars. I think that I probably can. And I'm going to do so. And so it's all about all of those things for us. And it takes time, because we as a culture are invested in people because of who they are. That's my auntie. She has been my best friend since high school, and I can't really let that go, or this, that, and the other. And I have to stay committed here, even though we know it could be harming us. That increases your imposter syndrome.
It's stepping out of that comfort zone now. You already gave advice. I was going to say, could you give us some advice? You already did it. It's like what that advice looks like is understanding what you just said. Like going back to reiterate, women who are navigating imposter syndrome, what is that like? Could you give us like the ultimate advice? You gave us some, but what would you say to women who are struggling right now in that space with imposter syndrome, Dr. Daniels?
So I would say that you need to own your own story, own your truth, but don't let that be a hindrance of where you're trying to go or what you're trying to get done. Yeah, you may have come from a different space, or you maybe not have all the skills. Then that means you need to get connected with those who do. Right. And if you don't know how to do that, begin to branch out, expand yourself in a way. We can't say anymore on this podcast, you should have a mentor, a sponsor, you should be networking, you should be connecting. I think that you also have to be able to just stand, even if your knees are shaking and knocking so loud that you think people can hear them. Own and speak up. Stand up for yourself in spaces. Know when to do that. Know how to pick those battles. And then if the day is long and hard and rough, find you that safe space to get some support, whether that's through your mental health, through your therapist, a clinician, or your mentor, your homegirl, someone who is there, who can relate, who can just listen to you and lend an ear. And so those are some of the things I have to do when the days are long and rough, or I get a no, or it doesn't, I got to shoot that internal imposter syndrome down immediately. I have worked hard to be here. Today maybe didn't work out the way that I wanted, but that doesn't mean that that's the final outcome.
I love that advice. That is so good. So also I want to add to dispel, because sometimes you have to challenge what you're thinking. When you're thinking that negative, oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, or I didn't do enough, you start to challenge yourself, right? Like, okay, that's not true because XYZ. That's not true because I've done this. That's not true because, so you kind of have to pick yourself back up and do some self-coaching, right?
Absolutely.
So I love that. That was great advice, Dr. Daniel. So it's been a pleasure having you on the show again. We just love having your advice and your wisdom. So if you would like to share your information, so if someone would like to further the conversation with you, that would be awesome.
Yes, my website is www.drcarmeladaniels.com. And I can be reached there. My email's there. My phone number's there. You can drop a line. You can find me on any social media platforms. And as always, it's an honor to be here to share space with your audience and to share just some of our lived experiences. And these are things that we go through every day. I don't have it all the way right. And some days it just happens how it happens, but we keep going. We keep moving. We don't quit. And we never give up.
Absolutely. And we support one another. Like you and I, we support one another.
Absolutely.
Every time we get on the call, it's something you said or I might say to encourage one another because
Yep.
we definitely need that. So I love that. So as we wrap up, if you've enjoyed your time with us today, I would love for you to like and comment and subscribe to the podcast. This is our new podcast. So, and if you want to connect with me and you need some coaching, you can send me an email at voemetoday@gmail.com, or you can go up on our website and see what our other services are under voicesoфencouragement.com, where we are empowering minds and transforming lives. And remember, be bold, be kind, be true, be you. And what I always like to say, and I say this on my other podcast, is walk worthy of the call for which you were called. But then also remember, a candle loses nothing by lighting another. Take care.